Okay, today's daf yomi, the daf yomi for Shabbos Kodesh, which is actually daf yomi for tomorrow, is Nazir Nun Daled, Nazir 54. We're going to start on the bottom of 53b, and the Gemara is discussing whether or not if you have a limb that does not have enough flesh on it that can regenerate on its own if it was still attached, whether it's going to transmit the tumah, through carrying masa or maga or touching. Rabbi Yochanan says that it will not, and Reish Lakish says it will. So the Gemara says, meaning to say the Nazir will not have to be Megaleach, and Reish Lakish says he would. So the Gemara now asks, we don't even understand the scenario that the Gemara is referring to, where this limb that you could possibly, according to Rabbi Yochanan, not become Tamei. According to Reish Lakish, you would. Either Isba Esem Kisa, or if it has a bone the size of a barley corn. So anyway, we say that if there's a bone the size of a barley-sized bone, that it's metame with touching. My time with Rabbi Yochanan. Why does Rabbi Yochanan say that it does not transmit to tumah? Why is it Rabbi Yochanan say the Nazir is not migoach? And if it's not the size of barley, my time with the Reish Lakish. So why would Reish Lakish say you have the Nazir is migoach if it's not the size of a barley? So the Gemara says, Reish Lakish says, no, even though it's not the size of a barley, we're still going to say the Nazir is megaleach if it's a bone from a limb, that even though it can't regenerate. And why is that? So why is that the case? That if this limb is not the size of a barley, and there is not flesh on it that can regenerate, why does Reish Lakish say that the Nazir would have to be Megaleach? Because Afilu Achi Rachmana Rabia, it's a specific, almost like Gezeres HaKosav. It's like from the verse, the Torah adds on to it. The Torah tells us you have to do it. The Tanya, the verse says anything that touches on the face of the field. What does that mean? And now the verse continues, that he was killed by the sword, obemes, or if he just died, al panei hasadeh. So obemes. So what do we do from this verse? Al panei hasadeh. When the fact that the pasuk says al panei hasadeh, this refers to ze'amal al panei hames. This refers to somebody who is mahil. He's covering over a dead body in the field that's transmits tumah. B'chalal. This refers to Eber min hachai. This refers to somebody who touches a limb from a living animal, a living person, v'yesh lo sarucha, and the limb is able to regenerate. The flesh on it is able to regenerate. So a person who's even mahil over such a limb, he spreads his body over such a limb, and the limb is able to regenerate, then he's going to be considered tamei. The next case is charev, harezeh kechalal. So we're saying that if you touch the metal, the sword that had touched the dead body, so since the sword had touched the dead body, then it's like a metal, and so therefore, or some say even if it was in the same tent as a dead body, it's going to, they become like the dead body itself, and so they are metame with the stringencies of the dead body itself. Obemes, ze ever anichal min hames. When it says in the verse, or dead body, this refers to a person who touches or he places himself over a complete limb that came from a dead body that has enough flesh to heal itself. Such a person will become tamei. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Now we go to the next case, Oba etzem adam, or the bones of a person. Zerova atzamos. This refers to a person who is touching, or he covers over the bones of a person, but that are a quarter kav, and that person will become tamei. Oba kever. That refers to zeh kever satum. If a person, we learn from the words oba kever, or of a grave, we learn that if somebody touches or covers over a kever satum, and it's closed on all sides, he's tamei. Even though under certain circumstances, if he had gone over the sides of the grave, he would not become tamei. But in this case, if he goes over the whole dead body, then he would become tamei. In a situation where there's no space around the dead body, when there's no space above it, so then we just say that the only way you're tamei is if you go right over the dead body. And so that's what it's referring to. In a case where it's a kever sasum, where there's a closed grave, meaning to say it's right above the grave, the dead body is right, the top of the grave is right above the dead body, the grave goes up and down, but it doesn't go to the sides, it doesn't include the rest of the grave. So this is referring to the Thomas of the Ugabe Negia. Then the Gemara says, but there's another brisa which refers to those tumos that are metame by touching and carrying. Tanya, we learned it says in the verse, and it says that the Kohen will take from the hyssop, dip it in water, and he'll sprinkle it on the tent and all the utensils and on all the souls that touched the bone or the halal or the mace or the cover, the bone or the part of the body or the dead body or the grave. So what do we learn from this verse? If you touch a bone the size of a barley, this is even if you touch a limb from a dead body, which is not able to regenerate, you're still going to, through the touching, you're still going to get tamei. That sounds like Rich Lakish. Oba mace, this refers to Aver Nechal Min Mace. This refers to a limb that fell off from a dead body. Oba, this refers to a limb that fell off from a dead body. So we see from here that the limb had fallen off from the dead body and it doesn't have enough to regenerate. So such a person is going to come tamei. But anyway, we see from here, Oba kever, the brisa continues. What do we learn out from the words Oba kever? Amar Rish Lakish, Zeh kever shelfnei adibor. Rish Lakish says from the words or the grave, this refers to the grave prior to Sinai. And so therefore, somebody touches a grave that was in existence prior to Matan Torah, only through touching are you going to become tamei. This refers to somebody who touched a pre-Jewish grave. That person is only tamei through touching and not through 10 tumah. So now the Gemara says, how did Reish Lakish learn out the words that a limb which does not have the flesh to regenerate is going to become tamei? Hi Aver Mina Mace Echidami. When it says that if there's a limb from a dead body, that what is Rish Lakish that you're tamei by touching? Echidami. If there's bone the size of a barley, well, that's when the verse says that if you touch the bone, and so even though there is no bone the size of a barley, nevertheless, the Torah is saying you're going to become tamei just by touching it. So that's a proof for Rish Lakish. So Rabbi Yochanan would say, no, in that case, there is a bone the size of barley. And we needed to teach us both for touching your metame and also for carrying. And so that's what Rabbi Yochanan would say. So now the next line says, that you sprinkle that we learned in the Mishnah that a Nazir becomes tamei by one of these tumos that are listed. He sprinkles the ashes on him. He gets the ashes sprinkled on day 3 and day 7. And then he messes up his count, and first he brings his karbanos, and then he starts again. So the Gemara says, so the Gemara asks the question, now which our Mishnah says it doesn't count Ache Yitar, but Shvi Kai, is it referring to the day 7? He doesn't start to count anew Ad Aveda Erev Shemesh until he immersed in the mikvah and there was nightfall. Umani Rabbi Eliezer. And this follows the position of Rabbi Eliezer, which we saw earlier on Daf Yud Ches, who says that the Nazir became tamei. He starts to count as Naziris immediately after he immersed on day 7, even though he doesn't bring his karbonos onto day 8. And according to this position, he doesn't start to count as Nazirus until he is purified on day 7, and afterwards he brings his karbanos on day 8. Odoma b'shmini kai, or maybe, hold on. Or maybe Mayachi Yitar Achi Avi Karbanosaf, or maybe it means he starts to count only after he brings his karbanos on day 8. Umani Rabbanani. And this is the position of the Rabbanan. Let's say you only start to count on day 8. Tashma, so the Gemara says, let's try and bring a proof. Midikatani Seifa, from the Mishnah that deals with this on Amud Beis. So this is the Mishnah that we're going to get to, God willing, on Amud Beis. And the Mishnah tells us as follows. That immediately after he immerses, he starts to count. And so therefore he doesn't have to bring his, he's not required to wait till day 8 in order to count. So the Reisha, when the first part of the Mishnah says, until he's purified, his intent was to say until he's purified by bringing his korbanos on day 8. Umani Rabbanan. I mean, Nazir Sitara at Shmini Lochawa. That it says that the Nazirus of the purification, that he's not allowed to start his new count until day 8. That's when he brings his korbanos. So now we're up to the next Mishnah, that the previous Mishnah had said all those things that the Nazir has to be megaleach on. Certain tumos that he messes up his count, he has to be megaleach on. But now our Mishnah is going to say that there are certain tumos that if the Nazir became tummy from them, he does not mess up his count, and he's not megaleach, he does not bring a korban. And so some of these are from the Torah and some of these are rabbinic. So Aval, the Nazir became tamei through sechachos. What is sechachos? Like schach. He walked under a tree that has an outsized portion of a dead body under one of its branches. He doesn't know which one. So we're not 100% sure. We're not 100% sure that he walked under it. And the Gemara Maseches Nida says that the tumas of the schachos is not biblical because it's not a complete OL. Why is it not an OL? So Tosfos says because the branches are far from each other. And so therefore, we're not going to say it's a biblical OL. That's what Tosfos explains. So Rambam gives a different answer, fine. And also, if he became tamei from the paraos, what does that mean? That he walked under stones that are coming out from the fence. And there's an outsized portion of the dead under one of the stones. We don't know which one. And the point is, the Gemara Nida says if you walk under the stones, you're not biblically tamei because that's not a complete ohel. What's the reason there? Why it's not at all? So Tosfos says we don't know where, and so therefore that's the reason, biblically speaking, because it's suffix tumah in the public domain. That's Tosfos' explanation. Fine. And also, if you walk into a Beis Apras, that's a field that has a grave that was plowed over, and we don't know where is the tumah. And also the Eretz Amimim. If you walk into the land of the nations, the sages decreed tumah on anybody who enters into the land of the nation. So it's just rabbinic tumah. That the Gemara Masechah Shabbos tells us that there are 3 times that the sages made a decree on the land of the nation. The first, they made a decree by Yossi ben Yoezer, Ishtrei, and Yossi ben Yochanan. They made a tumah on the actual earth of the land of the nations, meaning to say anybody who touches or carries the earth. And then they made a decree, but that was just tumah suffix. But then they made another decree 80 years before the destruction of the temple, and that anybody who enters into the airspace is going to become tamei. And then they made a third decree in Usha that the land of the nations is tamei certainly and not from a suffix. So anyway, a Nazir who goes outside the land of Israel, even though he becomes tamei, he doesn't shave his head and he doesn't bring the korban tumah. V'hagoel, and somebody who touches a goel, what's a goel? That's a tombstone that was placed on the grave. Vidofik, these are stones on either sides of the grave that they put the tombstone on top of. And when we say tombstone, it's not like we have a tombstone. This was a stone that was right on top of the grave. V'revius dam, or if somebody touches or carries a quarter loaf of blood from the dead body, that is enough to make him tamei, but it is not enough to make him cut his hair or bring the korban. V'rova atzamos, or if he's in a tent with a quarter lug, with a quarter kav of bones, like we said before, like we said at the beginning of today's daf, the kelim hanogim b'meis, or if he touched utensils that touch the dead body. So even though that he become tummy as a result of that, and even though he's tummy d'oraisa, like we said chalal charev, nevertheless he's not going to cut his hair as a result of this tumah, because the Torah says chiyamus meso of the peta piton. It has to be something where the dead body comes on itself and not the utensils. Alehu, under these circumstances, Eina Nazir Megalech, the Nazir does not cut his head. And also, Mazeh B'Shlishi V'Shvi. And also, nevertheless, even though the Nazir does not cut his head under these circumstances, he does have to sprinkle his ashes on day 3 and day 7, so that it'll become tar from this tumas mace. But nevertheless, he does not have to cut his hair. And he also, on the top of min dal on the base, he doesn't lose his earlier count. And what does it mean? Immediately after it becomes purified, he goes and he returns to his count, the carbon angle, meaning to say the period of time where he's tamei, he doesn't count that towards his nazirus, but as soon as he's finished, he resumes his count, but he doesn't lose his initial time, and he also doesn't bring his carbon, because only if it was an absolute tumas mace would he bring the carbon. Be'emes amru, but it's halacha Moshe. You see now the word be'emes. The Rambam writes, means it's a law from Moshe at Sinai. Yemei azav va'azava v'yemei askara shemitzora harei elu olenlo. That a person who has tumah from a zav or a zava, a man or a woman, that they began to count their nazirus, and then they got this ritual impurity by being the zav or the zava from this flow from their body, and they now have to wait, until 7 days to become purified. Or a mitzora, a nazir who got saras. It's a law from Moshe Misinai. Not only do those days not close out his nazirus, but they're even count towards his completion of nazirus. It's just an unbelievably interesting law, which is that the person could actually become tamei. He will be tamei, but yet at the same time, he is a nazir and is counting towards his nazirus. So the nazir is actually not perfect. He's tamei. The nazir is not perfect. He's living in a state of ritual impurity. A very, very interesting and deep law. So the Elohein ha-sechachos. This is the tumah of the sechachos. What is this tumah of the sechachos? Ilan ha-mesach al-aretz. This is a tree which is shading over the ground. Uperos hayotzos min hagader. So there's a tree that comes out, one of the branches coming out of the ground, and the sages decree that tumah on anybody who passes over it. And this is the pros. These are hayotzos min hagader. These are stones that come out from the wall. And there's tumah of a dead body under one of the stones, and the sages said that anybody who walks under will become tamei, but that's not enough to really become for the Nazir to shave his head. Yeah, so the Gemara asked the question. This tumah that the sages decreed, that if you walk outside the land of Israel, you're tamei. Mishum avira gazrola or dilma mishum gusha gazrola. Why are you outside the land of Israel? Are you tamei? Is it because of the airspace? And so therefore, let's say you enter into the land of outside the land of Israel in a box that interrupts from the tumah, you're going to become tamei because you're in the airspace, or maybe it's because of the earth. And the decree was only that the earth makes you tamei, and so therefore, if you're covering over the earth, you're tamei. But if you're in a box or an airplane, you're not going to become tamei. So the Gemara says, let's answer this question. Tashmau mazeh b'shlishi b'shvi. In all these cases, you sprinkle the ashes on day 3 and day 7. The avros mishum avira, and if you want to say that it's because of the airspace, hazal amaway, why would you have to sprinkle? The sprinkling is only from the coming in contact from the dead body, and so therefore, the tumah outside the land is not a tumah from tumah sameis. Allah mishum gusha. It must be that you're becoming tamei from the earth, coming literally from a dead body, and so therefore you need the sprinkle. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a proof. It just refers to the other cases in the Mishnah. And this is also logical from the fact that it says that if you touch the utensil which touched a dead body, then we're going to say that you're tamei. But hani kelim b'nei azan, and would you say that a person who touches these utensils who touch the dead body requires this sprinkling? Meaning to say, we're talking about a wooden utensil that when you touch them, they become an avatuma, and somebody touches them only becomes a rishon tuma. You're only tamei till evening. It just refers to the other cases, not these. So the Gemara is going to just bring this up, but we'll stop here. Everybody wish everybody I will stop here our recording. Wish everybody a good Shabbos.